back with another episode of the Nebraska Football Show. I'm Tim Verghese, as always, joined by Steve Marik. Steve, Nebraska got their first road game win, first road game and first road game win. They're
Yeah.
4-1. And you've moved houses. How's the move been for you, man?
The move has been very stressful, and I urge everyone who are thinking about moving houses to not ever do it ever. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean there are more pleasant things in life than moving houses, so we'll just power through this and get her done.
Yeah, moving's the worst. I've only moved apartments, and it's always just been me. So it's always just been one, 2 bedroom apartments.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, the how what goes into moving houses.
Yeah.
Do not want to think about that at this time in my life.
No.
Um, but like we said at the start of the show, Nebraska's 4-1 through 5 games of the season. We're heading into Rutgers. Nebraska's back at home this weekend. I guess we're looking back at Purdue. Kind of, what are your lasting thoughts? What's kept your attention since I guess the pull away win? Are you more concerned with the first half, more impressed with the second half? I guess what are you feeling?
Well, I thought it was good. I thought, going into that game, everyone was kind of wondering about Nebraska's defense and its ability to stop the run against a Big Ten rush offense. And that was what, you know, they didn't necessarily do well, especially in the second half, and even more, especially in the fourth quarter against Illinois. So everyone was just kind of wondering how it was going to go in West Lafayette, right? Because that's what Purdue hung its hat on offensively, was its run game. And Nebraska, I thought, really had a good response. The defense did in West Lafayette. They didn't really let the Boilermakers get their run game going at all. Devin Mockabee was did not have the impact. Reggie Love III did not have the impact that Purdue needed them to have for them to win that game. So when you take away that run game for Purdue, they're left with that pass game, and the pass game, has just not been there. It's not been fluid. It's not. Doesn't really look like it has any rhythm to it at all. They're struggling, and I think when after the game on Saturday, and we all come back home to Lincoln, and then you hear the news on Sunday that Graham Harrell was fired. I mean, it wasn't a large surprise, I guess, because that offense just was clunky and no rhythm. And I know they were missing some pieces at receiver too, but it just wasn't really a good sight offensively for Purdue. So I thought Nebraska's defense really did what they needed to do and had the response that they needed to do. Now, I don't know. That football game in the first half was so hard to watch. It was just for a football fan in general, it was really, really hard to enjoy watching just because of all the penalties and all the procedural stuff. Like the Nebraska's offense had false starts on key third down and one, a key fourth down and one, and that backed them up and just kind of ruined drives and halted drives. So there was a lot of things that was not very pleasant to see, but to their credit, in the second half, they got things rolling. They got in a rhythm. I thought Dylan Raiola was protected very well by the offensive line. Purdue's pass rush did not really get to him at all. And the one sack that Nebraska gave up, well, wasn't really on the offensive line. It was on Dylan Raiola when he was just kind of scrambling out to his right and they clipped his foot. But yeah, I thought it was good to see the run game show up in the second half, and Nebraska's offensive line, I thought did a good job of moving people. Shout out Alex Bullock, coming off the bench and playing the most snaps that he's played all season. He's one of the team's best perimeter blockers. And what did we see? A lot of Ja'Cory Barney, Jalen Lloyd hit plays to the outside to hit the edge of Purdue's defense. Marcus Satterfield obviously saw something on film that he wanted to exploit in that area of the field. And I thought Alex Bullock was a pretty important piece of having those plays hit for big explosives because of his blocking ability. Perimeter blocking was a thing that was a storyline that was hovering around the program for a while now. Obviously Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair are going to have to get better with that, but bringing Alex Bullock off the bench, that's kind of his specialty, I would think, is just being that strong veteran guy who can stock block really well, and he showed that. So, it was a lot of good, a lot of bad, but mostly I think it was good just to go on the road, like Rule said, with your third string left tackle and you didn't really notice him at all. I thought it was a good response for Nebraska after kind of that disaster of Illinois.
Yeah, and you and me have talked about this for a while now. It's like see, year's always been about baby steps, and I think they took a couple good steps forward on Saturday, showing you can finish out games in the second half, showing that adversity in tight games you can't let it get to you, can finish out games. Because at halftime, I mean, the field was just like Nebraska should be up by multiple scores. Like I felt
Yeah.
that game should have been well in hand for Nebraska. They were able to make it that way pretty quickly in the third and fourth quarter. But I don't know. I just kind of felt like again they should have closed in the first half. I didn't really have any qualms in the first half. Like I didn't think they were going to lose that game just because I felt eventually that offense was going to click, that levy was going to break,
Mhm.
and they were going to able to get into the end zone. I think.
The long snapping issues, the snapping issues on the field goal units is just a little bit crazy right now.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I mean that's a major issue right now. And again, like we can
yeah.
get to it here in a second, but I think in a game coming up where the next two games where the margins are so slim, you have to have something in your kicking game. You can't keep settling for fourth and long misses or failing to go for it. And I don't know. At this point, it's just yeah, you need something there, especially when a game again coming up with what you have with Rutgers and uh Indiana coming up, and even down the stretch, Ohio State and USC. Field goals matter in those type of games, and if Nebraska's just getting nothing in that department,
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating. It's frustrating for sure.
Yeah, and it's going to be frustrating because, like Rule said, he's been telling us this all season long. Is look, I mean, they're in the Big Ten. Everybody in this conference, most everybody, is a tough football team, and it's just going to be a lot of one-score games down the stretch here. And if your field goal unit is kind of reacting like Nebraska's is right now, where it doesn't look like you have a solid snapper, at least like Camden Watucky, Aiden Flegge. I don't know what the issues are, but if like the snaps just haven't been good enough, and sometimes Brian Buschini, the holder, is having a little bit trouble getting them because they're so off target. And when that stuff is happening in front of you when you're a kicker, I mean that's just getting in your mind, and it's going to turning into more mental than physical, and it's just going to impact things in a negative way. And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, I think John Hull is going to be a good field goal kicker. Honestly, I do. But with all that stuff happening in front of him on a play, not knowing for like not being 100% sure that the snap is going to be good, and Brian Buschini is going to have to be like reaching all over. I mean, that can impact a kid for sure, especially with his first season kicking like it is with John Hull. So I don't know what the answer is because you only got two guys on the team that know how to that have been snapping on those field goal units. So there's something needs to happen right now. I guess you just got to keep your head down and grinding through it, and hope that the good snaps in practice, which Matt Rule says there's been a lot of good snaps at practice. It doesn't mean anything if it doesn't translate to the game. So it's a major thing to keep an eye on moving forward here.
I wonder a little bit with both the special teams unit, specifically the field goal kicking unit and the offensive line, how much of this is like I mentioned this on radio earlier this week, but when you look at the O line, I felt like they started to come into rhythm a bit in the second half on the
Yep.
ground, and I think that's really important for a unit is like just having that hive mind, like being able to work as a unit. And I feel like they finally got there in that fourth quarter. And I think an important context to remember with this group up front, and I say this to lead into what I'm going to say about the field goal kicking unit as well. It's a group that has not was very limited, I guess, prior to the season in the amount of times this specific five practiced together. We saw the starting five when it was Turner and then Justin Evans and Micah Mazuka and Ben Scott and Bryce Benhart. Not in that exact order, but it was those starting five. That's who
Mhm.
was practicing for most of fall camp together with the ones. Then you have Micah go down. And so Henry Lutovsky's out there. And Henry's had some run with this group, but not as much as those first five had gotten together in spring. And then Turner goes down and Teddy goes down. And now it's Gunnar Gutul out there. And how much run has Gunnar had with these other four offensive linemen? Not much. Like really not all that much. So this was the second game where this group is working together. First game where they're where uh Gunner specifically starting. I think it just takes some time for that unit to get some rhythm, and I think they finally started to get there in the fourth quarter. I think that bodes well down the stretch for Nebraska's run game. Just a group that's kind of finally been able to find a back they can be successful with, and they have a good understanding of his timing and what he's looking for in Emmett Johnson. And I say all that to say, but the same thing with the field goal unit. They've been rotating holders or rotating long snappers. It's been
Mhm.
Fleggy and it's been Witucky and Bushini, and it's been Alvano out there at kicker sometimes. It's been Hole out there. Like it's just been this like because they're mixing
Revolving
so many
door.
different pieces. How much specific like practicing of snaps, holds, kicks has Johnny Hold, Aiden Fleggy, or Camden Witucky and Brian Bushini gotten together? Like prior to the game or prior to Alvano's injury, I can't imagine it's been all that much. And so now it's like, okay, like now you're seeing those lack of reps. It's like maybe it's just a matter of time with them of figuring out how each person wants it. And that gets figured out eventually. But right now they're just getting nothing in that department. And that's really disappointing.
Yeah, you mentioned Micah Mazuka. We can talk about that one next with offensive line because I know, it's a five-man unit that needs, to have chemistry to be good, to have snaps together under their belt, to be good and everything like that. But did it surprise you, Tim, when Matt Rule was asked about Micah Mazuka and he said that, you guys ask and talk about Micah Mazuka a lot, but he's a backup. He's always been a backup here, according to Matt Rule. I mean, that kind of caught my ear, I guess, because I guess I watch the games. I'm not a coach, but to my untrained eye, it seemed like Micah Mazuka gives the offense more in the run game than Henry Lutovsky does, and that's not a slight to Henry Lutovsky. He's done a good job at Nebraska, doing some spot starts here and there, taking over for some guys who have been injured before, and he's been a quality offensive lineman, I think. But I mean, Tim, what do you think? Would you rather have Henry Lutovsky out there or Micah Mazuka out there?
I mean, per the numbers, it's like again, like you're saying, it's not a slight to Henry. It's just like literally
Yeah.
per the numbers, Micah
Mhm.
Mazuka is one of the better run blockers in Power Five college football, like or
That's
Power
what I
Four college
thought.
football. Like that's
That's
what
what I
he's
thought.
been in the past too. And so I do kind of understand it just in the sense of like again, this is not he's a backup. I feel like not in terms of play, but in terms of mentality and in terms of buy-in and a lot of that. We've heard plenty off the field, but like it's one of those situations right now where it's just kind of like wait and see on him to figure out. I don't think he's a backup in terms of talent. I don't think that's what Rule meant. I just truly meant it's like, hey, listen, there's no special exceptions here. Everyone has to get with the program and buy into the program. And Micah isn't really any different here. And as of right now, like it's leading to him, losing his starting spot. Like, it's an odd situation for sure.
Mhm.
And I mean, I was pretty surprised that he was just still with team more than anything.
Yep.
But again, if Nebraska can get something out of him at some point, it'd be good. I think he does, like you said, he does give the O line something a little different in the run game, and so I wonder, how Nebraska kind of manages this situation moving forward. I did want to ask you, kind of coming out of that game, um, Sierra had a great game. Sierra played fantastic in coverage. And you watch him rep to rep, and you watch the way he sticks in coverage. Um, and whenever Tommy Hill's ready, and I think it's going to take another week or two. That bye week's going to be very helpful for a guy like him,
Mhm.
just to keep getting back. It's just that type of injury. I don't think you want to risk it, especially what you're going to get with Rutgers. We can talk about that here in a second, but um, do you see a world where they could potentially slide Sierra in at that other corner spot and potentially move Buford back to that third safety spot or that nickel spot, or just move it around in such a way where you maybe have, because they talked about wanting to get more rotation in the back end. Does this give you another body to potentially do that with Buford and or Sierra, where okay, hey, we've got six established guys or even seven. Like, we saw a lot of Mario Buford out there. We saw a
Mhm.
lot of I feel like we saw a good
Jeremiah
bit
Charles
of
has
Jeremiah
been,
Charles out there
yeah.
too, and he looked solid, and Charles is a guy that not the same upside, I don't think, or not the same ceiling, I don't think, but similar background to Tommy Hill, where he went both ways in high school, primarily played some receiver, really athletic, fluid hips, like just needs some time, and I think he got that time in practice where it's starting to come together for him, and I think like Saturday was a good confidence boost just in terms of what it looks like out there, getting some live reps. He did let up that late touchdown, but he was in solid position over there, solid position on a lot of those balls that went his way. I like what I saw from Charles in the defense overall, and I think they've got, some guys they can trust when they want to rotate a little more.
Yeah, Tim, I'm right with you. I think that look, Sierra Wright has really impressed me. He has I mean I've said it on here to you. We've talked about it off camera and everything. I was getting some red flags with Sierra Wright in the summer when he chose to land at Nebraska out of the transfer portal from USC. But he has proved me wrong. He is looking way more comfortable right now than I thought he was at the beginning of the year. And that makes sense because he was so new. He was such a late addition. I mean, it was always going to take time for him to get into a new program, understand and learn what that new program is going to ask of you. And that's completely different than what he experienced at USC. But one thing that I think is really cool, and it's a minor detail, but I think it tells me at least that he's more comfortable at Nebraska and in this scheme is he's starting to dance more on the sidelines. If he does something well, he's starting to show a little emotion and have fun with it. And when guys start doing that, I like it because it tells you that they're getting comfortable, they're feeling confident and everything. And Sierra Wright, I was watching him in pregame warmups. He was moving around, he was dancing, he was having fun with the student section. And I think that that is all positive stuff, especially for a position like corner where you're out on you hardly have help. You're out on an island. You need to be a confident dude to be a corner, especially in the Big Ten. And I thought he did really well on Saturday against Purdue. Even when he tackled Reggie Love the third and came up a little bit gimpy and needed to take a few plays off, he still came back and I thought responded well once he shook off that hit. So that was really positive stuff, I think, from Sierra Wright. And I absolutely agree with you, Tim. I was thinking this during the game. If Nebraska's defense wants to play around with Marquise Buford and maybe have him rotate at safety with somebody like Malcolm Hartzog, I mean, I think that they would be comfortable with that, just because of the emergence of Sierra Wright and everything that he has shown. He's shown that he can be a quality starter in the Big Ten, in my opinion. And I think the coaches believe that too. So I think that there's a strong potential for Sierra Wright to come back and be a starter for this team, and that would allow the defensive staff to kind of play around with Marquise Buford too, who, by the way, I think would be all for kind of playing more safety too, just because if that's what the coaches think will help the team, Marquise Buford is going to do it because
For sure. And I do think he's better in space. Like I do think he enjoys
sure.
being able to come downhill and
Hmm.
and hit on guys or like really spot drop more than he does at corner. Like I do think that's where you see him flash a lot more. But no, I completely agree on Sierra. And I was about to say, like, I love a confident corner. I think it's so
Yeah.
important to that position. And
Hmm.
him gaining that back is impressive. I think you're seeing the tale of two transfers here between him and Micah. Just like again, two guys that kind of came at a bit of a crossroads in their career for two very different reasons. Sierra
Yep.
for play reasons and Micah for, other reasons.
Hmm.
And it was kind of just like hey, Micah, like one good season, you could be in the league, and on the flip side, it's like, all right, Sierra, like your career is here, like it's kind of just like a rehabilitation project right now. But
Yeah.
he's bought in. He came in over the summer, like really locked in, and you started to see just the natural tools showing again, kind of playing fast, playing loose,
Hmm.
and just letting his natural talent speak for itself, while also putting in the work to improve the aspects of his game that were holding him back at USC. And you're seeing significant improvement in every department of his game. But like again, he looks like a completely different player than he did. This is not the player that left mid-year through USC last year. Like
No,
it's a completely
he's
different
more
player. He's
physical.
playing, yeah, a
When
lot
he
more
like I
physical.
love that he stuck his nose into Reggie Love's
Yeah,
chest and he took a hit and he felt it. You could tell and Purdue picked on him right after that play because he was clearly not 100% and he got a completion on him. But once he came out and shook off that hit, I mean he was right back at being the Sierra Wright that we have known here at Nebraska. So I love the fact that he stuck his nose in there. He didn't look afraid of a 225 pound running back coming right at his face. So it was really good to see him do that, recover from it, come back, and then pick up where he left off. And one more thing before we move on, I like that. I like the comparison transfer wise because between Micah Mazuka and Sierra Wright, and Micah Mazuka has had the same position coach too. That's not like Sierra Wright. When Sierra Wright came here, Evan Cooper was his position coach, and now he's had to do all this with the new position coach and John Butler. So credit to John Butler because whatever he's doing, it's making an impact with Sierra Wright.
For sure, for sure. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, like who knows? Maybe it's just the like former NFL coach. It finally clicks for him.
Yeah.
He's seen, like John. I mean, yeah, Butler. But Butler's mentioned, like with guys, he likes to see it previously. It's like I've seen it here, and maybe there's just something out there. Like you look at, see again, Sierra has NFL level potential. And you look at some of the guys that Butler's been able to have success with back in Buffalo. He kind of fits like that, like Teron Johnson, that Tre'Davious White, that lankier like corner with some length in their frame that plays physical and
Yeah.
is sticky in coverage. Like he's
Hmm.
seen this before, and I think but that's it's helped him unlock a bit of his game.
Hmm.
Flipping over to Rutgers, like kind of just like Sierra, Nebraska had a nice little bounce back moment, but another test on the horizon. 5-0 Rutgers coming into town. Um, how do you feel going in? Like where do you see this game?
This is going to be a just a normal, I think, Big Ten West type game. And I know Rutgers was in the East and everything, and the divisions don't exist anymore. But I think this is going to be a close game. It's going to be a physical game. Rutgers is going to try to run the ball, which they do fairly well. And Nebraska's should, in my opinion, try to run the ball as well because I think there's a lot of opportunity out there when you look at Rutgers' defense is giving up 5.87 yards per carry, which is dead last in the Big Ten. So there's going to be opportunity there to run the ball on the ground. And, again, just like the formula is always going to be with a guy like Dylan Raiola, if you can establish that run game early and get Rutgers to dedicate another hat to the box, you're going to have opportunities outside down the field for your big, tall veteran wide receivers in Banks and Nair. So I think this is going to be a close game. It's going to be a physical game that's probably one between the tackles on the ground. Who's the tougher team? This is just going to be kind of like the Illinois game, except I think Illinois probably has some better skill players and quarterback, but this is just going to be a tough game. It's going to be a rock'em sock'em, in between tackles type game, in my opinion.
Yeah, this gives me all the same feels of Illinois, just in the sense of
Yeah.
even offensively, they challenge you in almost the exact same ways. It's just like you said, there's a better running back there. Actually, I think it's better two running backs back there. I like Samuel Brown the fourth.
Hmm.
I believe I'm saying that right. It's Samuel Brown the fourth, correct?
Hmm.
Um, but I like those two backs. I do think the quarterback and the skill talent is a step down from what Illinois had. But
Yep.
they challenge you in the exact same ways. It's a lot of these inside runs, these RPO looks where they put defenders in conflict. It's a lot of moving laterally. It's a lot of like moving across the formation. Nebraska showed to struggle with that against Illinois. I want to see what this defense does against another team that does this to you because you're going to see it again against Indiana, and you're going to see it again against USC, and you're going to see it again against Wisconsin. You're going to see it obviously against Ohio State. Like, is this defense ready for this? Because I think compared to like a Purdue, where Purdue just couldn't get much going offensively outside of when you stop the run, you can stop them. This is a team that can find that has answers through the passing game. It's
Hmm.
going to find little wins in RPOs. They do a lot of these like, hey, we're moving the tight end across the formation. We're going to dump it off to him, or we're going to hit you across the middle on a little corner, or like or deep on the in the intermediate on a little corner route. Like they have answers at all three levels. They challenge you. And this is a team that I think, like you said, like it's going to be physical, it's going to be tight. This is a game where the margins absolutely matter. And when I say margins, I'm talking Nebraska being able to finish in the red zone, Nebraska being able to get some red zone stops,
Yep.
Nebraska's being able to stay clean in the penalties. Nebraska through 5 games has 40 penalties on the year. Rutgers
Hmm.
has 16.
They've been
That matters. In a game like this, that's going to matter. Nebraska's going to have to play disciplined football. They're going to have to keep, and Rutgers doesn't turn the ball over much. I think they've got two on the year. So
Yep.
they play clean football. They play disciplined football.
Hmm.
And you watch, I think the biggest thing for Nebraska here, too, you watch that offense. They take everything they can out of leaky yardage. Like every single additional yard they get, they make the most of it. And so Nebraska has to absolutely eliminate those. You have to bring Kyle Monaghan to the ground. You have to, like, you can't let him push forward. You saw that run against Washington where he's just
Yeah.
running through contact from, was I think, backed up on his goal line and took it out to the 40-yard line. He's just breaking down. You can't let that happen. You can't let that happen to you. You can't let him individually beat you. I think what you have to do here defensively is you have to force Ethan to beat you.
Yeah.
You have to force him to beat you with his legs and through the air and force him into mistakes because I think you can get him to make some mistakes if you force him to throw. He just hasn't been forced to do that all season. I think you flip to the other side of the ball, like you say. I think there's opportunity to be had in the run game, like unlike Purdue, where Purdue was suspect to the run, but it was very well schemed up runs. And Oregon State and Notre Dame do a good job of scheming up runs. Nebraska didn't have that same success until the very end of the game.
Mhm.
Unlike that, I think Rutgers in general just struggles against the run. I don't think it's a scheme issue. I don't think it's like oh, if you really scheme it up against us, we won't be able to stop it. I think you could just run it at them. And I think you'll be able to have the size advantage. I think you have the physicality advantage of just running at them. And I also think it's a one-on-one matchups matter here at the wide receiver position. I give Nebraska obviously the size advantage with Banks and Nayo out there, the speed advantage when Barney and Lloyd are out there. But can those guys win one-on-one? We haven't really seen it with Lloyd specifically, and
Mhm.
Isaiah Nayo just winning, being physical in one-on-ones, being able to just out physical a guy. Obviously, you don't want Lloyd being the one that has to out physical anybody, but you want
Yeah.
to see that from Isaiah Nayo. We haven't seen that yet. So this is a game where him just having that hand strength and him just playing physical and trying to be a dominant 6'4" receiver really matters.
Yeah, and one area that I'll be keeping an eye on is the red zone, because you know Rutgers has the top red zone defense in the Big Ten. They're holding opponents to, once opponents cross the 20-yard line, they're only scoring 54% of the time. Now, going even further, once opponents are crossing the 20-yard line, they're in the red zone. They're only scoring a touchdown 36% of the time. That's the best in the Big Ten, along with Washington. They're tied with Washington in that stat. And Nebraska, as we know, once, and we saw it at Purdue, they got into deep into Purdue territory, but they didn't always, convert and put points on the board. And that, I think, has really irked Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield. And they know that they need to change that. They need to put points on the board once they get in the red zone and in plus territory. Nebraska's only scoring 77% of the time once they get into the red zone. And obviously, the field goal unit has a lot to do with that, with getting two blocked and then one missed at Purdue. So that's going to really hurt the percentages. But once Nebraska gets into the red zone, once they get in plus territory, finish the drives. They haven't been good at that lately, but I think they can be. But Rutgers has also shown that it's a bend but don't break defense. They're keeping opponents off the score, off from scoring, so pretty well. So I think that Nebraska finishing drives once they get down there is going to be a big part of this game. Can they do it? And if they do, I think it's going to be a good thing for them, and they'll get out with a win if they play clean football and finish drives like they know that. Like I think that they can.
Yeah, I think this team challenges again, like I said, there's similarities to Illinois just in the sense that they run
Mhm.
similar offenses and they're going to challenge you in similar ways. But I think the biggest challenge here compared to Illinois was just more physical than Nebraska and had a
Yep.
better offensive scheme.
Hmm.
This is a game where I feel like it's going to be on Nebraska being able to get the most out of the margins, like I say, being able to be that team that is more disciplined, that can eke out wins. Because Rutgers last week they got outgained by I think 200 to 300 yards,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
found a way to win. They just find ways to win games, and that's what they've done under Greg Schiano. And I think that's the biggest thing here is Nebraska on the other side. They're figuring out how to win games. And so
Hmm.
you're seeing a team that comes in with two different types of like Nebraska's going to have the talent advantage. I think across the board, Nebraska's got the talent advantage compared
Yeah.
to Illinois.
And so Tim, did you watch that Washington game?
I
Or
did.
yeah, so just for anybody who didn't, Rutgers is coming in here 4-0. But they so Washington tried a 55-yard field goal at the end of the game as time expired and it didn't go in. So it was a very, I think Washington got their dose of Big Ten football in Piscataway, and it was like you said, Tim, there was such a discrepancy with the total yards. Washington was moving the ball up and down. But like I said, they didn't always like finish the drives and get the ball in the end zone. So Rutgers has been pretty good at bending but don't breaking, and winning games that way, and then just leaning on the run game. Kyle Monahan is one of the best running backs in the country. So he's got excellent balance, and he can break tackles and get more yards that way. So yeah, it's going to be a game where Rutgers hasn't really beat itself this year. And Nebraska at times, as that's been the thing with Nebraska, is shooting itself in the foot, hurting itself, doing things like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see the officiating from now on too, just because I think this past weekend especially, everybody's been talking about it
They just
so
came to a
much.
head, I feel like, across the
Yeah,
conference.
head coaches have been talking about it too. So I think something, maybe not. I don't know how these things work, but maybe something will change in the games moving forward.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about Ethan and Kyle Monaghan specifically. I think those are the two main people you really need to know offensively.
Yeah.
Um,
And this
and
will
I
be
do like
third.
I
This will be Ethan's third game against Nebraska too, because
yeah.
he spent most of his career began it at Minnesota, and he's beat Nebraska twice already. One time as a backup in 2022, and then last year in the season opener in Minneapolis, beat Nebraska as well. But he doesn't blow you away. He's a guy who can make a good throw here and there. Um, and also hurt a defense with his legs. He's mobile, so we know that. But he doesn't just blow you away. I think there's if a game depends on Ethan Kaliak-Manis, I think that's a good thing for Nebraska because I'm not sure I
Yep.
trust him to go out and win a game for Rutgers through the air with his arm. I'm not sure of that.
Yeah, I'd agree. Defensively, who are you watching for? Is there anyone specifically you're watching for?
Yeah, so when I think about this game, I think that Nebraska wants to establish a run. I think it's going to be a game that's won in between the tackles. They're going to give the ball to Dante Dowdell, Emmett Johnson. Those two guys seem to be the top backs at Nebraska right now. And if they do that, Marcus Satterfield is going to want to take his shots. You want to do that when your quarterback is Dylan Raiola. So there's going to be opportunity down the field on the edges with the wideouts. So if you're looking at it like I am on for Rutgers' point of view, Robert Longerbeam is my guy that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. He's their best corner in my opinion. He's 5'11", 180 pounds. He leads the team in pass breakups with 3 this season. He's been there forever, fifth year guy, just old veteran guy. So I think he's going to be matched up on Isaiah Nair, Jamal Banks, and Rutgers, I think, is really going to be relying on him to hold up in pass coverage. So I think there's going to be some opportunities, one-on-one opportunities down the field with Jamal Banks, Isaiah Nair against Robert Longerbeam. He's a good corner. He's an old corner. How does Nebraska's 2 receivers do against him? That's what I'm going to be wondering. So I think there's going to be some opportunities there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And for me, I'm watching Aaron Lewis, defensive end.
Yep.
They don't do a good job, or they haven't been able to get after the quarterback. Really, they've got 4 sacks on the year. Nebraska's got like 20 more pressures than they do. But Aaron Lewis has not had any problems. He's got 15 pressures on the year, and he hasn't recorded a sack. Hasn't got home yet. But he's getting after the quarterback for sure. And you watch him. He's a lot of fun. You don't often see a defensive end or starting defensive end wearing 71 and one that
Yeah.
looks as athletic as he is. He's chasing guys sideline to sideline. He's chasing guys behind the line of scrimmage. He's going to make life difficult for Dylan Raiola. And I'm interested to see kind of how he matches up with whichever tackle he's on, whether it's Gunnar Gattulo or Bryce Benhart. I will say this too, real quick on Rutgers offense. They get good tackle play. They get good O line play. I wonder how Nebraska manufactures pressure when they've got really good offensive tackles, and they can kind of focus like Illinois did, focus the interior of the line on Nash and Ty and trying to eliminate those guys and forcing Jamari Butler and the ends to win some one-on-one matchups against good offensive tackles. Can they do that? We'll find out. I do think we got a good step forward with Tony White getting back to what he wants to do defensively. I think that Purdue game was Tony getting back to what he wants a little bit, and
Mhm.
we may see that again this week. Just him playing kind of in his zone, in his comfort zone, and letting guys pin their ears back a bit.
A lot of those simulated pressures resulted in sacks. Ty Robinson's sack at Purdue, I felt was helped a lot by Willis McGahee threatening to rush, but then he drops back into coverage at the snap, and then Vincent Shavers on the other side of the line is wasn't showing pressure, but then he goes at the snap. So I thought it was really good to see. It kind of felt like last year a little bit where the line of scrimmage was just loaded with bodies, and you didn't know who was going, who was coming, things like that, who was rushing the passer, who was dropping into coverage, and I thought it really it impacted Purdue's offensive protection in a negative way. So maybe continue to see more of that as well this week against Rutgers, which has a good veteran offensive line too. So we'll see how they handle those pressure looks and if everybody's on the same page of, passing guys off and things like that, because I thought Nebraska took full advantage of that and got after Hudson Card's butt.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think that'll probably do it for us here. We'll have our predictions for how this game is going to go result wise later this week with our bowl prediction show. And I think we'll probably just get out of here on that note. But yeah, stay tuned over at Inside Nebraska's YouTube channel, and we'll be back later this week.